Hello there, my name's Johnny, and today I'm back in Blender. A month ago I saw this cool painting of a coffee pot on Facebook, and I thought it'd be a great study for modelling in Blender. I was curious to see if I could recreate a somewhat accurate representation of the original painting using Blender's ray tracing renderer called Cycles. Ray tracing, if you didn't know, simulates how real light works, creating accurate shadows, reflections, transmission values, to simulate things like glass or water, mirrored surfaces, or bounced light. Version 1, it started well, removing the default cube and then inserting a cylinder to then begin modelling the Mokka pot from, but right from the outset, it was doomed to fail because, of course, I'd picked the wrong number of edges. If I'd have looked closer at the reference, or perhaps at some real-life Mokka pots, I would have noticed they have 8 sides and not 9 or 10. So this was an issue from the outset, which then I didn't realise until I got to the spout making part that I'd made the error. And so it all came unstuck when I was trying to model this spout here, and then the spout didn't match the original reference. And I couldn't figure out why. And at this point I hadn't even noticed because, again, I'm just kind of spitballing it. So here I am merrily modelling the spout and modelling all the interior stuff which will never be seen and is absolutely irrelevant when it comes to reflections on the outside. This, of course, is a complete waste of time if you're modelling something that's only ever going to be seen from the outside. Do not do this. This is bad practice. I mean, unless you really need the practice, that's a huge waste of time modelling the interior of something when you're never going to see it. And what I should have done from the outset is block it out in a simple way first, rather than going all in on the detail and then spending several hours modelling it. So finally, after spending way too long modelling all the stuff inside you won't see, I got around to making the lid, the handle, and the lid handle thing. And then from there was building out the environment to match the same colours and see if I could recreate that lighting and those reflections. Just as an aside, my palette on the left there, which is not the default setup in Blender, is a palette of colours from a site called Low Spec, which has essentially very simple colour palettes for specifically pixel art stuff, but I use it for the simplicity of having a limited colour set. It means when I'm modelling stuff I don't have to think too much about picking colours and stuff, I just stick to this palette generally. So now it's just quickly messing around with the lighting, seeing how things look in the Cycles engine, and then finally doing a first render to then see if those reflections do match what we see in the original painting. So this first render doesn't look bad, but the proportions are way off. The reflections are in the wrong place. And generally, it doesn't look a lot like the original picture. So for version 2, I found some reference, I think, of the same pot, and started modelling from that. But I still managed to get everything slightly wonky, because again, it wasn't an actual to scale drawing. It was a picture, or 2 separate pictures that I don't even know were the same pots from different angles, but there you go. So that's what I was doing there. I was trying to model based on these quite low quality pictures. So the same issue came about again, where the reflection on the spout didn't quite match the picture, the painting, and I couldn't figure out why. So that's version 2. The spout is still in the wrong place. The handle was stolen from version 1. The grungy look kind of works, but it still looks a bit odd, and overall doesn't quite match the painting yet. So for version 3, it looks like I've actually found, it appears to be a pattern design for the original Bialetti Mokka pot, including the actual proportions, number of sides, and all that kind of stuff. So from this, I can probably model a fairly accurate copy in Blender. I think it is a Bialetti in the actual photo. the very angular handle here suggests that it is indeed a Bialetti. Yeah, down to the design of the actual spout here, which you can see. So that's what I'm going to model for version 3, and hopefully it will look correct. So I've now imported these images as planes, and that should give me, hopefully now, a more accurate pot for version 3, which should hopefully give an accurate representation of the pot and then match the painting. So I'll just do a time lapse again, because there's not really a lot technical going on here. It really is just making a octagonal prism and then scaling it around. Pretty much the whole thing is basically versions of an octagonal prism just scaled around. So there's not a lot of technical stuff here. So I'm just going to whiz through most of the work here because that's quite simple, and I'm going to try and keep the actual topology simple as well. So I'm not going to try and model the interior and all the really crazy complicated stuff. I'm just going to make really basic shapes to then really focus on the actual reflections and stuff. So when it comes to the rendering time, in theory, again, it should look a lot more like the painting. So the last thing to be done is to model the handle, and now with some proper reference I can make it quite accurate to the original pot. So the final thing, yeah, with the handle, it's literally just extruding a face along on a 2D plane. You can think you can right click and it extrudes to the point you click. Then all you need to do is basically move those points around, then match the shape, and you're done. Because I'm using subdivision to then give some rounded edges, here I'm just adding control edges and stuff, which makes it slightly more... what's the word? So if you just subdivide something, it ends up looking like a sort of blobby, gelatinous mess. So if you add essentially control edges, they're called, it means when it comes to rounding off, it's not quite as severe on some of those edges, so you get like a nicer transition. So for things like the handle, where it looks like a slightly sort of geometric plastic handle, it looks more accurate. So that is pot number 3 pretty much done now. The last thing to do, of course, is to render and see how close I can get it to the original painting. So, mostly the same, I think. I mean, it's a bit rough because what I've done, I've tried to recreate a painterly effect with the compositor in Blender by just adding a bunch of filters and noise and stuff over the top to then make it look more painterly. But yeah, I mean, not bad. I spent more time than I should have done on this, but it was just an interesting exercise to see if what was in the picture here is physically accurate. I mean, I guess it was painted from an actual real life thing. It is based off a real object in the real world. So what they painted is what they saw. But I wasn't able to completely match the reflections there. So these sides work well, but I don't know about the angle. I can't quite get the angle. I know the proportions are slightly different on this one, but anyway. So there you go. That's modeling a Mokka pot in Blender.